The Russian Tea Room is one of the most famous and historic restaurants in all of New York City. No one can deny the sheer beauty of the establishment. However, reviews of the Russian Tea Room haven't always been so great. In fact, food critic Steve Cuozzo called the restaurant the worst in NYC. Despite that, the Russian Tea Room is iconic, so I just had to dine there and find out for myself what the restaurant was all about. It's a beautiful day today here in New York City. Right now I'm at Central Park just admiring the stunning winter landscapes before me. It is beautiful here, but I'm more so here to talk about where I'll be going for dinner tonight. Today I will be going to one of the most iconic and historic restaurants in all of New York City. I'll be dining at the Russian Tea Room. Now, this will actually be my first time at the Russian Tea Room, and to be honest, I'm a little scared. Reviews of the Russian Tea Room are mixed, to say the least. There was this one article that came out a few years ago that literally called it the worst restaurant in New York City. Plus, it's on the expensive side. I mean, a bowl of borscht will literally cost one nearly $30. Because of those factors, I've never been in much of a rush to dine at the Russian Tea Room. However, no one can deny just how beautiful the restaurant is. Plus, it has a ton of history, and frankly, those are factors that really captivate me. So I figured because of that, I should at least give the Russian Tea Room a visit at least once. Plus, it is also Restaurant Week, which means the restaurant is offering some prix-fixe menus that seem to be a pretty good deal, at least in comparison to their normal prices. Now, I'm still a little nervous about my visit. It's hard not to think about some of the things that I've read about the restaurant. But I've got a plan. I'm going to take out a bit of an insurance policy. One of the things the Russian Tea Room is known for is their vodka selection. So I figured I would get some vodka. If things aren't going the best, well, I'll have some vodka to turn to. So with that being said, let's head to the Russian Tea Room for dinner. The Russian Tea Room is located in Midtown Manhattan in a narrow building nestled between two skyscrapers. The restaurant was founded in 1926 by members of the Russian Imperial Ballet. During its early years, the establishment mainly served tea and was frequented by Russian artists, particularly ballet dancers. Over the years, the restaurant grew in popularity and its customer base expanded to include many theatrical and film personalities, fashion designers, and artists. In fact, the restaurant has long advertised its proximity to Carnegie Hall, which is right next door to the tea room. There have been numerous changes to the restaurant's ownership over the decades of its existence, and the establishment has had its share of ups and downs. At one point, there were even plans to turn the restaurant into a golf museum. Thankfully, that museum never came to be. While I was a bit unsure of how my meal would go, I was nevertheless excited when I arrived to the restaurant at 5 p.m. for my reservation. After checking in, I was soon seated and was able to take in the stunning space. The Russian Tea Room is absolutely gorgeous. I was in awe. There was just so much to look at, from the walls plastered with artwork, to the shining gold ceiling, to the bright red carpet. The Russian Tea Room is truly a feast for the eyes. I was seated in the main dining room, right across from the bar, but the restaurant is actually much larger than what I was initially seeing. There were multiple levels to the tea room, with a couple of private dining rooms. The second floor's bar lounge looks magnificent. I would love to dine in that room one day, but unfortunately it was closed off when I visited. Downstairs is a sort of gift shop with some interesting items on offer. Because of the beauty and uniqueness of the restaurant, the Russian Tea Room has appeared in numerous TV shows and movies like Tootsie with Dustin Hoffman and Showtime's Billions. In terms of the atmosphere, the Russian Tea Room nailed it, but I was skeptical in terms of the food. Nevertheless, I began to peruse the various menus. I was at the restaurant for Restaurant Week, which included a prix-fixe menu consisting of 3 courses for $60. The selection was decent and included many of the establishment's most popular offerings, but of course the regular menu is far more expansive. During the afternoon, the restaurant offers a traditional tea service with a few different varieties. In addition, there's a decadent list of champagne and caviar pairings with some eye-watering prices. Next, I explored the beverage offerings. The Russian tea room has a modest wine list, but I only gave it a glance because I was interested in vodka. Unfortunately, the vodka flight I was interested in came with a $70 price tag. Previously, when I looked at the selection online, there were no prices, so it was a disappointing surprise. Instead, I considered the restaurant's cocktail selection. I ended up choosing the Russian Tea Room Dirty Martini, which consisted of horseradish-infused beluga vodka, dry vermouth, and olive brine. Now that was a pretty solid drink. The olive brine was of course the predominant flavor profile in that beverage, but I enjoyed the spicy, subtle hint of the horseradish-infused vodka. The horseradish flavor was indeed a good twist on a classic cocktail. While I was upset about the vodka flight pricing situation, that Dirty Martini certainly helped to alleviate the situation. First up in terms of food was the bread. I was presented with two options, a sourdough roll or a pumpernickel roll, and I ended up choosing the sourdough. The bread was alright, but it was nothing special. The flavor was okay, and it was semi-warm. At the end of the day, the bread is included with one's meal, so there's really nothing to complain about. I then turned my attention to the appetizer, which arrived at nearly the same time as the bread. I went with the pelmeni, which consisted of beef, mushrooms, peas, and sour cream. Now the portion was fairly small, but it was a good-looking dish at least. Flavor-wise, I enjoyed it. That was a tasty appetizer. Pelmeni are basically traditional Russian dumplings. I found the beef filling to be fairly tasty, and the other components of the course were pleasant as well. I particularly liked the pop of dill in the mix. Overall, that was an enjoyable and comforting dish, even though it was a bit small. So far, my concerns about the restaurant's food have been unwarranted, but that was unfortunately not going to remain the case. Next up was my main course, the kulbiaka. The dish consisted of a pastry-wrapped salmon with onions, mushrooms, chopped eggs, lentils, and a mustard beurre blanc on the side. Now, I've never had a kulbiaka, but it's similar to a Wellington, and the Russian Tea Room's offering looked pretty good. Plus, it was a nice portion size, especially compared to my appetizer. Overall, I was excited about trying that dish, and my first bite wasn't bad. The salmon, combined with the flavorful pastry and all the other elements, was pretty good. However, I think I just got lucky with that first bite because everything after it was just sort of bland. The fish could have used more seasoning, and really every component of the dish just needed more flavor. Thankfully, there's the mustard beurre blanc, which I added to the plate, and that definitely improved things. The sauce provided some good richness as well as a bit of tartness. Basically, it helped to alleviate the overwhelming blandness of the course. The problem was, there just wasn't enough of that sauce. Also on the plate was a side of lentils and some random pieces of cabbage. It didn't taste bad, but it just felt like I was eating flavorless matter. To put it simply, it was a boring side. To sum it up, if I paid the full $57 for that dish, which is how it's priced on the regular menu, I would have been upset. Frankly, I'm glad that I decided to visit during restaurant week. The course wasn't bad, but I would not order it again. After finishing, it was on to dessert. I decided to go with a dish that I've never had before. I chose the midovik, which is a Ukrainian honey cake. It looked interesting. I wasn't sure if that lone blackberry on the side of the plate was meant to serve as an artful presentation or if it just fell off the cake during transit. Well, at least I liked the look of the plate that the dessert actually sat on. Flavor-wise, the cake was alright. It was only lightly sweet. It wasn't bad. Texturally, the dish was pretty dense. Now, I looked at other pictures of Meadowvik cakes on Google, and I must say, they looked a hell of a lot better than what I had. Basically, it felt like I was served a cakey hockey puck with a lightly sweet honey flavor. Overall, that dish wasn't terrible, but I wouldn't recommend it. To put it plainly, the Russian Tea Room is a beautiful restaurant, but the cuisine leaves a bit to be desired. Lenore Skenazy of the New York Daily News summed it up pretty well in her article about the restaurant back in the year 2000. If you want opulence, it's here. If you want history, hurry over. If you want borscht, run for your life. Thankfully, restaurants aren't static, and I hope that the Russian Tea Room can improve things because it truly is an iconic space. After finishing, it was time for the bill, which totaled to $92.54, but with my tip, I spent almost $110. So I just finished with my dinner at the Russian Tea Room, and that wasn't bad. But I've got to be honest, if it wasn't restaurant week and instead I paid the regular prices that the restaurant charges, I probably would have been a bit upset. Having said that though, none of the food was bad, it was just kind of underwhelming. Like that salmon Wellington dish, it wasn't bad, it just needed more pop and flavor, more seasoning and more of that sauce. Now my appetizer of that dumpling dish, that was actually pretty good. That was hands down the best thing that I had tonight. I am a bit bummed about how expensive the vodka flights were. I was really looking forward to that, but $70, no, I was not going to pay that. I was actually kind of surprised that they didn't have any curated vodka flights. Rather, everything was sold at the same price, despite the fact that some of those vodkas are more costly than others. It would have been so much nicer if they had curated vodka flights at different price points with different styles of vodka. For what they had, I thought that was just lazy menu construction. However, I at least enjoyed my martini. That was pretty solid. Now, putting the food aside, really one of the main reasons why people go to the Russian Tea Room is its atmosphere, and it is absolutely stunning. And I wasn't even in the most beautiful room. I mean, the pictures that I've seen of the second floor are absolutely amazing. That aspect of the Russian Tea Room I really enjoyed. To sum it up, the Russian Tea Room is not the worst restaurant in New York City. It's not bad, but it is far from perfect. I'm glad that I went to the restaurant during restaurant week because I think that's probably the best time to go. To sum things up, I still had a good time tonight. I think I came with the right attitude and had my expectations in line. It was indeed a pleasure to be immersed in such a beautiful restaurant. I do wish that the food was better and that the prices were more reasonable. Oh well, at least I can mark the Russian Tea Room off my list because it is probably a good restaurant to go to at least once. So with that being said, it is time now to head home and think about where I will dine next.